Tokyo Vice is a 2022 HBO show, one of three I've had my eye on recently, the other two being We Own This City, from the creator of The Wire, and The Offer, which chronicles the making of Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. It stars Ansel Elgort, Ken Watanabe, and Rachel Keller. Tokyo Vice is based on journalist Jake Adelstein's non-fiction first-hand account of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police and the underworld. It follows a white journalist, a stranger in a strange land, as he works for a publication in Tokyo and ends up going after one of the city's most powerful crime bosses. It comes with the promise of a gritty but stylish exploration of Tokyo's underworld and the Yakuza, a particular organized crime syndicate that I think has been pretty underused in Western movies and shows, so I was looking forward to this. It first came to my attention because Michael Mann, the legendary director of Heat, The Insider, Collateral, and Last of the Mohicans, was attached to it. He ended up only directing the pilot, but the show's name obviously riffs off Miami Vice, which he was a big part of. Now, I don't want to go off on a tangent with this rant, but the first episode is full of Mann's mannerisms, so to speak. And I mean modern Michael Mann, the director of Blackheart and Public Enemies, not classic Michael Mann, director of Heat and Manhunter. So if you're familiar with his style after he fell in love with digital cameras, you know the drill. Bizarre, unorthodox camera angles, handheld camera work often right up close to the actors and focusing on random things, music slapped all over, making you a bit unsure of what the tone is supposed to be. It isn't particularly noteworthy, but the reason I mention it is because after the first episode, this season settles into its own rhythm and style, and episode 2 is where the show actually gets its opening credits, not the first episode. So Mann's episode feels pretty detached, especially with its style, and it does make you wonder what was even the point of getting him to direct the pilot, if he's going to be wildly unconnected to everything that comes after. It seems to be a gimmick at this point. Martin Scorsese with Boardwalk Empire comes to mind, of a big-name director attracting attention to a new series by directing the first episode, and then staying on with some vague executive producer job description. And isn't it harder to direct the first episode of a show, where you have to introduce characters, set up the plot, etc, etc? Why not give Mann the last episode, or one somewhere in the middle? Anyway, coming back to the show itself, there are pretty much three main characters, each of whose stories become interconnected. Jake is a reporter looking for a good scoop, and he develops professional relationships with cops and with criminals who he looks to use for good stories, and who in turn they try to use him to make their enemies' lives a bit more miserable. He is our moral anchor. A bit of an arsehole, but endearing enough, and his investigations lead him to becoming entangled with gangsters, murderers, and bizarre suicides. There's a white girl, Samantha, who is something of a singer and escort, but not sexual escort, at a club, who has ambitions to start her own thing, and she develops a relationship with Jake, but more so with a Yakuza novice called Sato, who is our third principal character, and who we follow as he rises through the ranks until he becomes trusted enough to be working directly for the boss of his clan. Ken Watanabe plays a cop who slowly becomes more and more of a key player, until the police become more substantial characters. He first comes off as pretty shady, but it's quickly established that the police must deal with the Yakuza, and he essentially attempts to keep bloodshed to a minimum by maintaining the status quo in the underworld. So you have the journalist, the woman, the Yakuza, and the cop. The very best thing about Tokyo Vice, something that really sticks out, is the sense of authenticity. I'm not Japanese, nor am I knowledgeable in Japanese culture, so I might be talking absolute rubbish, but it really feels like you have been transported to Tokyo. Nothing feels like a stage or film set, it all feels very real. Then there's the characterization of the characters, the fact that most of the time people are speaking Japanese instead of the show pandering to Western audiences, the fact that the main character is often subjected to casual racism which he has no choice but to endure. It doesn't feel like those movies where they insert Chinese characters and take the story to the east to please the Chinese market. If anything, Tokyo Vice feels like a criticism of the way things are in Japan, and very quickly Jake is overcome with a feeling of hopelessness, that nothing can change and the bureaucracies are all corrupt. With that being said, My overall thoughts on Tokyo Vice is that it has issues, but there is potential for greatness here. Some of the less than great factors include when the Japanese actors are speaking English. It just takes a few episodes to get used to, as it often sounds weird, like there's lip syncing going on, or some of the cast are reciting their lines phonetically. That's what it kind of sounds like. It makes it a bit awkward to stay immersed sometimes because you know a scene is being played seriously, but the way some of the dialogue is spoken suggests far from it. The acting for the most part is so-so anyway. I thought Elgort and Watanabe were good, as were many of the other cast members, but a few individuals let the side down. I wasn't particularly impressed with the actress who played Samantha. Something about her just screams B-grade actor, and I failed to see what kind of charms she had over the likes of Sato, which was essential to the story. In fact, her entire storyline, with her hanging around the club, entertaining guests, getting into a dull romantic relationship with Sato, it was all pretty boring, and I could really have done without it. The entire first half of the show is just a bit dull, really, both because of uninteresting plot lines and because it all feels a bit clunky and disjointed, with all the different elements being explored but not quite coming together. At times it feels like the show doesn't know what it wants to be. The escapades of a young woman who's run away from home, an analysis on police corruption and the integrity of journalism, a hard-boiled gangster drama, or a number of other things. There's 8 episodes, and episode 5 is when it starts to get good, when it really picks up. Suddenly things start to synchronize, and the show dips deeper into the cop drama and the Yakuza, and all of a sudden the good elements kick in and the gears start turning. Tokyo Vice very much feels like the setup for a show that will last for several seasons, if successful. It's a good setup for a new season. You can feel all the chess pieces being put into place for a show in which a journalist and an honest cop look to take on the Tokyo underworld. I mean, it's disappointing that the first season didn't do that. I thought that was the entire premise. But the show is finding its feet, and perhaps it will be one to watch after a few more seasons have been released. It definitely needs a second season, as it feels a bit unfinished, and the flash-forward opening scene of the season doesn't even happen. But many great shows, like Breaking Bad, had clunky or difficult first seasons. If they played their cards right, this could be a great slice of television. It really was a slow start. I was at a stage where I was regretting watching it, only really going through with it because I thought my subscribers would be interested in a review. But somehow it managed to amble its way across the finish line, left me in anticipation of what is to come, and ultimately gets a thumbs up from me. There's a surprising amount of solid character development for minor side characters too, so it makes me hopeful, as clearly there's decent writers in the writing room, they just need to sort their feet out. There's good stuff in here. And then there's the fact that, with the Yakuza, it's a bit of an untapped potential. But they need to refine what they have. That being said, if the same mistakes are made in subsequent seasons, I'll probably bail, because there's too much partying, too many pointless clubbing scenes, and too much focus on Samantha, who, funnily enough, now that I've said that, is actually quite an interesting character, with where she's been left at the end of season 1. There's good and bad. I mean, that hard-edged tension of the opening scene is never really matched in the rest of the season. We instead get weird stuff like 2 guys singing to the Backstreet Boys. When you think Yakuza, you think tough as nail gangsters, torture, murder, violence, gang wars. And yeah, like I said, it gets there eventually, but it does feel like season 1 is not fully sure of what it wants to be. It doesn't quite deliver, but there's potential here for a stylish, gritty crime drama with 3 main focuses: the cops, the gangsters, and the press. There's a line near the end, I think it's like the second last line of the show, where someone says something like, "Look, I know I fucked up, I know you don't trust me, but I'm here asking for a second chance." It's not a meta line by any means, but it does feel like it's describing its relationship to its audience, and I'm willing to give Tokyo Vice a second chance. Thanks for watching.